Awesome. Looks like we got everyone starting to roll in here.
Hmm, Love it. Gonna be a great one.
Everyone,
Steve, you're
Completely.
joining us from the airplane. It looks like you're doing some multitasking, maybe flying a little bit.
yeah, just some casual flying of a fighter plane, with my squad mates.
My favorite recently was our head of product had the same background on an OKR meeting, and he went to get a glass of water or something, but it looked like he was jumping out of the plane.
Awesome. Looks like we got a pretty awesome crowd here. A lot of familiar faces we can see on the call with us today. A lot of people that know our Stephen boss here quite well. You're a big attraction here, Steve. You as well, Matt.
Hello, everyone. Excited to get started. Let's talk about running a magical and productive service desk. Um,
Yeah, we got a lot of content today, so we're gonna kind of get straight into it, guys. Um, just to walk through what we're gonna be going through today, we'll do some quick introductions. We want to kind of talk about your challenge, should you choose to accept it. And then we're going to talk through how Matt and Steve have found success on their side, right? Like these guys have definitely sat in your seat at one point in time, and are really passionate about this topic, which is why they do it, what they do today, which is helping MSPs become more productive on their service desk side. So, quick introduction to Thread in general. I know a lot of you guys here are some of our partners. We also have people that aren't partners of Thread that are joining us today. So Thread is a service experience platform. We help MSPs provide more service magic to their customers by being able to meet them where they work. So by being able to meet your customers inside of their Teams and Slack environment, while also empowering your service desk to be able to do their absolute best work. So we see the most impactful change happens around your customers' experience whenever we improve both ends of that transaction. So whenever we improve how your customers are able to experience and receive support from your team, as well as how your service desk is able to deliver that support. So we give end customers a great place to be able to engage their MSP, as well as we give service desks new levels of efficiency through real-time work, automation, collaboration, AI. So that's just to draw out a quick little baseline familiarity of Thread for anyone else. Um, Quick introductions of the two guys that are going to be doing the vast majority of this talking on the call. I'm just kind of kicking us off here. So my name is John Snyder. I'm your kind of informal NC of the day. I'm an account executive here at Thread. On the call with us, you can see here we've got the pirate on the left. We've got Matt Len, our co-founder and COO.
Yeah,
And
happy to be here. Super excited. I'll give a quick intro and then I'll hand it off to Steve to introduce himself. So, Steve and I actually worked together in a prior life at a great MSP based out of New York by the name of RFA. Prior to joining Thread, it's also where I met our co-founder Mark Alayev. But prior to starting Thread, I had a 10-year career at RFA where I started in BCDRS, IT compliance, a lot of DDQs, things of that nature, and then grew up through the operations tree on to becoming chief of staff. And so where that experience becomes relevant is that one of the teams relevant to the conversation today is that one of the teams that I ran was the PSA administration team. So we'll be able to tell a little bit of tips and tricks, thread related and not, to help to optimize both the experience and also your services gross margin.
Thank you, Matt. Nice to meet you all. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Steve. I'm the head of customer success here at Thread. Like Matt, I have a deep background in the MSP industry. I started out as a help desk engineer. Worked on the help desk for many years. worked my way through on the different tiers on the help desk, starting as a level 1, working up to like a level 3, and then moving into roles like automation and then eventually becoming a service delivery manager. So I have a lot of experience on the service side, building great service teams, executing on it, and delivering service magic to the customers. So I'm really excited to share kind of what I've learned, in my past, as a service desk tech, managing service desks, managing NOCs and SOCs. Lots of great learnings that I've had. So nice to meet you guys.
Awesome. And feel free, as Steve and Matt are going here, to drop any questions, comments in the chat. I'll be reading the chat, kind of roping in any questions that I see for the guys here. So I will hand it over. This is now y'all's show.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about putting this webinar on, we wanted to start really with the fundamental challenge that we're looking to solve for when we think about productivity through the service desk, and by extension, experience. And so really fundamentally what we're trying to solve is that service, by definition, isn't scalable, or at least it hasn't been. Service as a concept, it's something that happens in real time or just in time, and it happens once in that moment. And so really, when we set out to build Thread, we wanted to build a platform that enabled those repeatable experiences, but through standardization, and then through standardization, being able to do it at scale. And so that's really the thrust of what we'll be talking about today. So as I just kind of previewed, really what's getting in the way of being able to scale and being able to scale productively is non-standardization. You all know it. You all don't like it, I assume. But essentially, when requests are coming in rapid fire to the service desk, and if it's non-standardized, if it's a bunch of different technologies, a bunch of different requests that are coming in, what happens? Chaos. And so, as you can see here, emails pile up, customers waiting longer than maybe they should be, and overall, it's a really bad experience. And if we go to the next, there we go. So really, the answer, in our opinion, is standardization. Standardizing both your tech stack and how you address those requests as they're coming in is the name of the game. So we'll dig into that in a little bit more detail. Steve, wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to that a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know in my experience running a service team, the biggest hurdle that we had to face, I remember when I first started as a service delivery manager, taking on our network operations team, and I learned that we had 30 different alerting platforms that we supported. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? 30 different alerting platforms? How the heck are we able to respond well to our customers? Turns out we weren't at that time. We weren't able to respond well because our scope was too big, right? Our techs didn't know the whole stack, right? Every tech had an expertise somewhere, but no one knew what to do for certain types of issues, right? And so the name of the game when I started, my being a manager was figure out how to take this massive bloat and shrink it down to something that was actually manageable. So scaling out the standardization of our, making sure that what we offer to our customers was standardized. Also making sure that, how we trained our team was also standardized. That way we could deliver better communication, right? More efficient, better quality communication with our customers, and truly deliver a magical service experience.
And so my sense is there was a formula to
yeah.
the outcome. Could you speak a little bit more about this as we move into each section?
Yeah. So I think I really think when you approach anything, you need to have like a kind of a point of view on how to build something great. And from my experience, I found that you want to first standardize on the customer experience. Like I mentioned before, right? if you're a small MSP, and I've been there as a small MSP, it's really tempting just to say yes to every potential customer that comes your way, and just say, yes, I can support that. Yes, I can support this. Yes, I can support that. Right? The thing is that your customers have opinions, right? And or they, but you, it's better that you have a strong opinion, right? Because your customers want to hear your opinion and they want to listen to you, right? So offering a standardized customer experience coupled with offering and really focusing on efficient quality responses to your customers. That means, when your customers contact you, responding quickly, responding efficiently, and just letting them know that you're on it, right? That's the most important thing. And then the team size, making sure that your team is structured in the right way to efficiently handle those customer requests, to efficiently respond to your customers, and also that your team knows how to support your stack, right? And the wider your stack is, the harder that is, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that too. And all that together equals service magic. Service magic equals happier customers. That's what makes you money.
That's right. That's right. Differentiated experience at margins that you simply can't deliver in any other channel in a scalable or as scalable way. And so we'll drill into each kind of aspect of this over the coming slides. But I think great job, Steve, setting us up. Perfect. So as Steve alluded to when we first previewed the coming sections, really standardization is the name of the game, but there's kind of a precursor or a pre-decision that you need to make before you can start to standardize. And that's really that my MSP is starting from a first principles standardized service model. So it's more difficult than it sounds. And I think a lot of providers are guilty of, or can be guilty of, getting in their own way. Now, what does that mean? That means not standardizing the nature or the type of customer that they're willing to work with, not specializing. So again, using RFA as an example, but a lot of our great partners, what they do is they find a niche or a target vertical within which to specialize, which then really drives all the downstream decision making, right? You know the stack, the types and the nature of value added services or requests that are coming in, because they knew that their core customer market was hedge fund, private equity, alternative asset manager. And so all the decisions in terms of stack processes, requests were driven through that lens. And so that involves also being opinionated, right? Understanding what works best, or really it helps you, it facilitates your opinionated point of view on the stack that works best for that type of firm. And really, where do you start? You start by honing in your ICP. ICP is short for ideal customer profile. It's a concept that you see a lot in software as a service or SaaS companies like Thread. But I don't know that a lot of folks are beating the drum within managed services circles to really narrow that down. Oftentimes we're targeting SMB generally or broadly. But again, that kind of flies right in the face of the advice here.
Yeah, I want to add to that too. Say that this is the hardest concept for smaller MSPs out there. So if you're a smaller shop, I'm sure you're probably struggling with this. I know I did. And all I'll say is that one thing I've learned is that your customers want you to be opinionated. They are looking for you for help, right? And that includes prospective customers, right? So saying yes to everything, I know is easy, and that's a great way to win that initial business. But if you want to keep that business and you want to keep that customer happy, you want that customer to refer other customers, right? You want to know who your ideal customer is and what you're really good at doing, what you're really good at servicing. And I think it's just going to make your business a lot more profitable, a lot more successful long term if you do that early work.
That's right. Yep. And so we wanted to actually, can you go to the next slide, please, John? Yep. We wanted to provide a little bit of additional value in how we think about nailing down your ICP and kind of the decision points that you need to make as you're honing that in, or to help hone it in. And so there are a couple paths you can go. Generally, I think the second path, the insight path, that we'll get to here in a second, helps to clarify a lot of the other items that I mentioned earlier. So value-added services, requests, like inquiries, things of that nature. But you can either go from tech stack forward. So I know that we can only have, or we only have Microsoft specialization in-house. And so we're supporting Azure, we are supporting SharePoint, we're supporting M365, and that's it. Or I think where you get a lot more mileage in the long term is you take a look at really where are the types and the nature of customers that I have expertise and we have expertise as a unit, as a service provider, and then start from there. So I gave the financial services angle example before. That gives you a lot of character and a lot of qualities to target and requirements, frankly, around compliance, security standards, what their investors expect. So it helps to hone in the types and the natures of technology that you could use as an example. But we do give some additional examples here under the insight section. So we have MSP partners who focus on education. That's a lot of G Suite, a lot of Google Workspace and Chromebooks. E-commerce and startups, again, a lot of Google, a lot of Slack, especially, and a lot of Mac-based support. So on and so forth. Corporate, we see a lot of success there personally, as Thread, because there's a lot of teams generally, but also we see a lot of providers who are focusing on professional services type verticals, getting a lot of mileage out of that specialization.
And focusing on an ICP also allows you to focus on hiring the right people on your team and bringing on the right talent, or training your team so that they know how to support that stack for your ideal customer profile.
That's right. And that's something you don't see too much about, but we think is really important element as well, is the psychographics element. And so what's the ethos or the philosophy of the type of company that we'd like to serve and support? What do they value? And then how do we speak to that value set in our messaging and in our service stack? All right, Steve, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So service team structure, that's, team is one of the variables in our formula, of course, right? And service is a team sport, right? You got to play together to win. You got to be organized as a team to win, right? You look at football teams, basketball teams, everyone has their position. They know their role. They know what they're supposed to be doing, right? And the same thing with service team, right? From the smallest teams to the largest teams, you need to have a good structure in place. We talk to a lot of partners every single day. And so we've learned from our partners, and I've also learned from past mistakes, past experience, what works really well, what kind of structure works really well. And what we've found is that you want to, number one, optimize players, the players on your team based on their skill set, based on where they are in their career, right? And so, we have a graphic on the right-hand side here, just one formula for how to structure your team, right? Even on a small team, it really works well if you have someone that's your initial line of defense, right? Someone that can triage, or number one, quickly respond to the requests that are coming in. We found that getting a quick response out to the customer is key to, maintaining that strong customer experience, right? Giving them a good feeling, hey, someone's on it, they got this, right? So, the first thing you want to do, you want to structure your team around this, is make sure that someone's responding to the customer the moment that something comes in, right? Let them know that you got it that you have their backs, that you're on that, right? So we always recommend having someone that could be a single person, that can be a, you know, 2 or 3 people, however the size your team is, that's on your line of defense number 1. This is like a tier 0 or a tier 1 type engineer. Their job is to respond to the customer, triage, and solve that issue, or try to resolve that issue if they can get it resolved in less than 15 minutes. If too much stuff is coming in, they probably want to route that to someone on the next tier, right? Now, what we see, smaller teams usually don't have enough people, you know, to do split out teams. You usually have some really awesome engineers that can do everything, right? If you're a larger team and you got, like, say a desk that's like more than 12 people, the formula that we found that works really well is to split those 12 people into pods, right? And you can have teams, different pods that service different customers. And the reason why this really works for our larger partners is that if you think about it, if you do the math and you got 12 people, and those 12 people or those 12 techs are servicing 60 customers, let's say, right? You do the math, 12 times 60 times 2. I think that's like 700 something, right? I'm bad at math. 720. That's 720 interactions that team needs to have minimum with those clients. You just get the minimum bare level of insight onto who that client is, right? So we mentioned earlier, every client's tech stack is a little bit different, right? If you split that team into 2 pods, one pod services 30 customers, another pod services 30 customers. Wow, all of a sudden, like, those techs, the math just works out. Those techs don't, you know, need to know 60 customers. They only need to know 30 customers. So they can get to know those customers a lot better and a lot fewer interactions, right? So we see, like, typically like a tier 0 or a tier 1 handling the first line of defense. We see like the second tier, like, can handle most issues, right? And a lot of times we see our bigger partners split those teams out, you know, into pods based on customers. And then usually we have like a pool team or resources that are the tier 3. They're the final line of defense, right? Think of, like, if the White Walkers breach the wall, Game of Thrones reference, right? They're like the Night's Watch, right? They're the ones that, like, are there to the very end to you know, to save Westeros, right? That's your tier 3, your final line of defense. So just think about, I mean, there's a lot of structures that work, right? But you know, just think about what is your team structure and how do you enable that team to do the best that they can do.
Yeah, and
Now,
I think,
go ahead.
I was going to say that I think the name, there's a couple themes, right, that you'll see threaded throughout the presentation. One being specialization. So having the tiered approach, but pooled resources gives you the opportunity to have the best of both worlds, right? Have a rapid response to handle most easy issues, and then it gives you levels of specialization behind it, specialization, standardization. If you're standardizing within a pod, right, on a subset of customers, that context, that tribal knowledge is built into the pod. And so you're able to resolve requests that much more quickly. When you're resolving requests that much more quickly and efficiently, service margin goes up, especially if it's an all-you-can-eat type agreement. And then, of course, final line of defense, right? It's your most specialized resources and also your most expensive resources generally, right? Citrix specialization, CCIE, they're not cheap. We all know that quite well. And so we want to make sure that if and when requests get to them, that the level of context is quite high. We're taking great notes before passing along so that their time is best used.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. One thing I want to add to that too is, like, you know, how Thread can help in those areas. We have some really awesome AI tools that we built into our platform that can help auto summarize issues when you escalate issues through tiers. We can even auto categorize the threads that are coming in so that you could build automation to map your internal documentation to different tickets based on the type and subtype of the issue, right? So if you have a standard operating procedure and you've documented for certain types of issues, you can actually use Thread to level up your team's knowledge and your team's insights to really deliver that really quick, amazing response. So I know John is going to be sharing out my scheduling links after this call. If you guys are an existing partner and looking to learn more about how you can do that, be sure to join us and schedule some time with me.
Excellent.
Cool.
And so I think training is the name of the game there, right? I think a big one that you mentioned just a second ago. And one of the most major aspects of training is, I think, helping folks communicate not only efficiently, but also improving the efficacy of their communication. So Steve, you could share some strategies that you've found to be very useful within the context of Thread's service desk, but also in your NOC/SOC service desk experience through the lens of training and also through the lens of communication. I think folks would benefit from it greatly.
I think the first thing to instill in your team is fast response is good, right? I know a lot of, having managed service teams, having been on the desk, sometimes you get grief from your team about like, I was busy on this thing, I couldn't respond, right? Or what have you. But you got to make fast response part of your team's culture. That's number one, right? So what that means is build a dashboard, build a report, right? In your PSA or Brightgauge or whatever reporting tool that you have that highlights time to response, right? And make that part of your weekly or daily, meetings with your team, right? Just always highlight time to response and always look at like, are you meeting your expectations and your customers' most importantly, your customers' expectations for you? Are you meeting those response SLAs, right? And if you slip, why, right? Be able to measure that and be able to know where you're at on response times. That's number one. And of course, we talked earlier about team structure. Structure your team so that you're able to respond really, really quickly, right? Having that quick response or fast follow team that's there to do a quickly follow up with a customer is critical, right? The other aspect, I think, is enabling your team through Thread to respond quickly, right? So Thread has this really wicked feature called snippets. What snippets is, they're kind of like, think of the PSA's standardized notes, just that they're on steroids, all right? So with snippets, you inside of our inboxing tool, you can just do a keyboard shortcut or type a slash command and quickly send out a personalized pre-canned response to your customer, right? And you can have a few of these snippets that you rotate through and just to quickly get that response out to the customer, right? And that gives the customer a great warm feeling that, hey, someone responded, someone's on it, my MSP has my back, right? And it also helps you kind of control, using tools like snippets, help you control the quality of the responses that your text send out, and that initial reply helps you make sure that it's a good response. But you can also go ahead. Yeah,
I think that's a great point that I wanted to double click on. And we've seen, because I don't know that a lot of partners or MSPs are thinking through that lens of the quality of the communication, or at least being intentional and building out their communication guideline. And I think some of our great partners who have standardized extremely well, WBM comes to mind, is that they have a framework, a guiding framework for the team that really drives how, who, what, when, where, why, right? Who's communicating, when, how they're communicating, like what's the nature of the response, and how do we speak and how do we write as an organization, and why. And really that is the lens through which they build not only snippets in our platform, but also how they communicate organization wide. And so I think that's a really effective and strong way to scale communications throughout a team of that size, given they're on the larger side.
Yeah, and I think we have some of those awesome MSPs on today's call. Actually, I see several of you guys on here. You know who you are. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, John, if we could go back one real quick. Back one. There we go. Yep. So I wanted to focus on the chart here quickly. There are some important elements as far as we're concerned. And I think the guiding message is that the medium is the message, meaning not every channel is optimized for every type of communication. And so maybe a phone's best for escalations and swarming issues. However, it's expensive, right? You have multiple resources potentially tied up on both sides. Expensive both for the customer and for your team internally. Again, if we're looking at a pod to tier 3 escalation, you have at least 1 or 2 people from the pod and specialized resources on the phone, all swarming an issue, probably get to resolution more quickly for something complicated. But again, it's an expensive proposition. Email, more async, slower to respond, slower to resolve potentially if it's something that's should be quick, it ends up not being quick. Similar concept with Portal. And then of course chat, we love chat, but chat isn't optimized for every type of request either. So I think it's if you're evaluating chat as medium, we of course can help you do that. It's our bread and butter, but really it's about training your customers and end users how best to leverage each medium in concert to deliver the best experience.
Yeah, have an opinion about how your customers should contact you, right? I think that's important. And one other thing I want to double click on here, to Matt's point, phones are being the most expensive service source. It's true. Your techs can only handle. I don't know a tech alive that can handle 2 phone calls at once. I'm sure someone out there has made it work somehow. But your text can only, I mean, realistically speaking, your text can only handle 1 phone call at a time, right? With chat, we have this concept that we like to talk a lot about inside of our inboxing tool called multi-threading, right? And we find that chat is really, really great for handling 2, even 3 issues at a given time. You can follow up in rapid fire on more than 1 issue. That helps you scale out your team, right? Helps you be more efficient. So just things to keep in mind there. And then swarming. One last thing, sorry. I want to talk about this. Swarming on aging requests, right? That's huge. One of the things I love about Thread but just in general, right? Is when you have something that's sitting a long time, no one knows how to figure out. One really effective strategy that's worked really well in the past is we have this term, Mark, Matt, and I, our co-founders, like to call swarming, right? And that is when something is really tough and no one can figure it out, right? We huddle together as a group and we collaborate and we get it done, right? We figure out what is the best path forward and we get it done. We don't let that issue sit and age. Meanwhile, the customer is just getting more and more frustrated, right? So just something to keep in mind, right? Don't let those old issues linger, right? Swarm on them, group up, team up. And that's one thing that Thread is really great at, is enabling you to collaborate with your teammates. One of the powerful features I don't think that we talk about enough is just getting, we have a feature called @mentions. You can @mention a teammate and it will ping them, it'll bring them into that thread and give them, bring them into that conversation so you can swarm together.
You might say it meets them where they are.
Yeah.
Which I think is an excellent segue to this slide. So we're big believers, massive believers in meeting people where they are. Clients, to Steve's point, can participate in a swarm as well, especially if it's something that, if you're in a co-managed environment or requires approval, it's getting the required expertise and authority, as well as the required specializations all on the same page at the same time, just in time to unblock or resolve an issue. And so when we say meet clients where they are, we're big believers in collaboration platforms, of course, Slack, Teams, and the like, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be their desktop. It could be their website or an intranet. Whatever makes the most sense for the type of business. Again, calling back to earlier in the presentation, the nature of the business will drive where to meet them. And so if we're honing in our ICP, we'll have a very good sense of where it makes the most sense to engage customers where they live. And really, the benefits there are multitude and many, but in our opinion, very much less. Where is this? Email follow-ups. Where's this ticket? I think I'm contractually obligated to say death to the ticket every time the T word is said. So death to the ticket. But yeah, really removing friction is the big idea there. And then by extension, I think to the communication aspect of things, Steve, you're the automation guru, so I'll let you take the lead on that. But really identifying opportunities for, back to the scale question, automation as an unlock. What are we spending a lot of time on that might be a low value, simple issue, but just it's something that's been manual or had to have been manual life to date. If we're able to get that off the team's plate or shift that to a workflow automation or an AI platform, it's a massive unlock. And again, that time savings goes right back to the gross margin.
Yeah. And I think first of all, automation is my bread and butter. It's my background. I could talk for days about it. But I want to just first start off by saying automation is freaking hard. And it's really hard for most MSPs out there. Yet everyone, myself included, want to automate as much as possible, right? Because it's just the daily tedium of your jobs that get in the way of providing a great service experience. So, I think you want to automate what you can, but you also want to automate what's easy, right? And part of that is, as you start to standardize more in your service, automation becomes a lot easier, right? And but also, where Thread I think really shines is that we're not necessarily right now trying to automate like user onboarding or complex tests like that. That stuff is hard to automate, let's be honest. What we do really well, what Thread does really well, is help you automate the tedium of your day-to-day service management. So think about triage. There's time wasted when every service request that comes in, just triaging that service request. What priority is it? What category is it? And the time that you spend waiting for that request to come in, waiting for someone to be available, waiting for that person to determine what the priority is, Thread already knows the priority the moment that issue comes in and can notify the right people, right? And that's where I think automation inside Thread really shines, is connecting the right people at the right time and enabling you so that you can focus on the service experience rather than all the extra busy, pardon my language, but BS of managing the service requests, right?
Yep. And I think that dovetails very nicely with the next slide. So I do appreciate where the Q&A section is very much in danger. So we do want to make sure have an opportunity to ask questions if they have any. Yeah. So further to your point, it's around automation. AI is your friend, right? Maybe a year ago, it was a newer, unvalidated concept in the space. I think ourselves and many other, not many other, but a few other vendors have been doing an effective job of kind of leading the charge down this path. And really, what we recommend, back to being prescriptive, is starting with back of house processes that are, again, cumbersome, slow, maybe unnecessary, like time entry. or asking a question, where is this, how do I troubleshoot this, how should I respond to this individual. Right side is the time entry component, as an example that we're able to deliver from our AI Copilot, Service Copilot product and add-on. Why should techs have to document what they've already done, right? Especially if there's an audit trail, a history. We are simply capturing the time and automating the entry for them so that baseline fidelity of the request and what was done on the request continues to stay high. It's in the voice of your company, and gets entered on time. So your service manager is no longer chasing folks for their entries. And then left-hand side is more of that. Where is this resource? How should I respond to this issue? Again, leveraging Azure OpenAI service as opposed to bothering your supervisor all the time. Yeah, so kind of bringing all the concepts home, right? So customer standardization on the ICP front, quality and efficiency of communication, and the ability to train and scale the team is really what Service Magic is made of, right? The goal being to reduce a lot of the manual effort, manual time, redundant work for all you can eat agreements, your block agreements, so that at the end of the day, there's more service gross margin for your business, and then you can in turn reinvest back into the business. And so here are some stats around what we are seeing for fully scaled partners today in terms of the impact the thread and a lot of these strategies are having on their business.
Pretty awesome. And I think, all these things, all these concepts really tie together to deliver these results, right? Meeting your customers where they are. I can't stress enough how important that is to driving down your times to resolution, right? Not only making your customers happier, that their issues are getting solved faster, but relieving the burden on your team. So important, because if you have to hunt and you have to chase down your customers, right? Think of all the follow-ups that you have to do just to get in touch with the customer, just to get a response on a simple request, right? Approval on something, right? I've been there, done that. It sucks, right? So, these concepts all really tie together nicely to get these kinds of results, right?
Absolutely. Or at least we like to think so.
Yeah.
I appreciate, and here are some more direct case studies that I think are a little outdated at this point. I know RFA is using more than 149 seats, but did want to open the floor to any Q&A for the last few minutes, if there are any, and if not, certainly happy to do a follow-up webinar if there's enough interest on any particular topics.
And while everyone is typing their Q&A questions here in the chat, we want to do a quick raffle as well on the call. So we want to give away $100 to one of you lovely folks that joined us today. How you can enter the raffle? If you could take a screenshot of the webinar as we're on it right now, post it on LinkedIn, say you enjoyed today's content, and make sure you tag the thread page. That's how we get notified that you made the post. One person that posts that they were on the webinar today on LinkedIn will get $100 from us. So thought we'd try something new, something fun.
Exciting.
So
I get $100 too.
Yeah, value on both sides, right? Value in the gift card and value to your bottom line.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you ever see us at a show, we give you a $2 bill if you talk to us. So we always deliver value here at Thread. Something we live and die by.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think John, I think you shared my weekly office hours link.
Mhm.
Like I just want to share, this is my weekly office hours thread. We have weekly office hours for our partners. If you're not a partner and just want to check us out, welcome to join us. But if you're a partner and want to learn like more about what we talked about today, maybe you want to learn about how to use our auto categorization of issues to map in like SOP documents into your threads so your techs know what to do on any given issue. I love to chat more about some of that stuff. on on our office hours, or if you want to know what are the most awesome snippets that you can build inside a thread, would love to chat about that with you guys. So just let us know. Feel free to join those calls and ask your questions. We
We've
want
got
to hear
a
it.
we've got a question in the chat for you guys, asking, how do you get your team to love the new processes that you give them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I appreciate the ask. We like to say that a tech experience or your team's experience is the leading indicator for ultimately what ends up being the end user's experience. And so if your team's not having a good time, if they're not loving work, if they're not loving how they're doing work, ultimately that could or probably will manifest in the experience that your customer has at the end of the day. And so I think really getting buy-in, you don't need consensus, but you need buy-in if and when you're making a change. And so I think that's number one, explaining the why behind the introduction of the additional channel. And really starting from that point of mutual understanding generally is really important. And then number two, if you're able to establish pretty quickly that it feels better, it feels different, it feels magical, as we like to say, there's less friction inherent in the process, and they feel empowered to do their best work. You'll have a bunch of raving fans on the team.
I love your comment, Albert. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. It's funny. We talk a lot, just to give you an example, we talk a lot to our partners about meeting your customers where they are. You heard us talk a lot about it. And what I love to hear is when our partners repeat that back to me, that is their principle, that's their core principle, right? And that's what you want with your, to get buy-in on your team, right? You want to sell them on the vision and mission. What makes your company successful, right? And pretty soon you're probably going to start hearing them repeat, your own stuff back at you, or back at the other techs, and that is when you got them, right? I'll also say this: culture. Culture is key, and just building a fun environment. I want to give a shout out to a partner that I work a lot with. One of our partners, they do a weekly call with their techs, and they kind of do like a fun exercises in every call. They make their weekly team meetings really fun and align with their goals. So one of their goals is broken promises, right? You don't want to break promises with your customers. And so they spin a wheel on every customer call, or sorry, every team meeting, and pick someone to talk about, that topic, and just make it really fun. So, just another concept to think about is just, try to talk more with your techs about, about what you're trying to do, your vision and mission, and then just get everyone engaged with that, right? And build some fun exercises around it to keep you guys focused.
Yeah, and it's a great way to celebrate and reinforce core values as well. I think we talked about this on a recent webinar with Crew Bobby did, whereby like our three core values at Thread are radical, intentional, and customer crazy or customer centric, depending on how crazy we're feeling that day. But really, we celebrate moments of radicality, of intentionality, of customer centricity on our all hands, on our stand-ups and our weekly meetings, for just that reason. Rewarding folks for embodying the culture of the company, it pays dividends. And I think certainly for us, and our hope it would be for you all, is that you would see a compounding effect there.
All right, looks like we have time for one more question in the chat. Mike here asked, how do you guys implement automation without sacrificing your customer experience that you're delivering?
You want to take that one, or I can start?
I think that's a great question. That's a really great question. Just makes me think a little bit. I mean, I think the big thing is the automation needs to focus on the customer experience. If you're not focused on the customer experience in your automation, then it's not going deliver a great customer experience, right?
Yeah.
You know,
And what I would
go
what
ahead.
I would couch that in is focusing on the experience means intentionally not impacting the experience in the decisions that you make. And so
Mhm.
I think we said it a little bit earlier on when we think about AI. The reason we recommend starting with back office processes is not only is it the lowest bar to get to ROI on those investments of time and of course funds, but also as your team is getting your hands around how best to leverage the technology, how best to leverage it in concert with workflows, the more effective you'll be at scaling those decision points, those use cases up internally. You'll start to see noticeable improvements with the team. The customer will also see noticeable improvements if your team has more capacity to do their day-to-day work. And so really that's a way to deliver a lot of value today and see a lot of benefit, a lot of ROI today without extending to the customer, the automation side quite yet. That's the golden goose, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? That's what's next.
Exactly. I think doing things like auto prioritizing your incoming requests, right, has that has a great positive impact on the customer experience, because instead of the customer having to wait to for you to actually respond in a queue, right? If the customer's waiting in a queue and maybe they're waiting 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That's 5 minutes or 10 minutes that you don't know that it's a P1. Whereas if you know right away it's P1, you get notified. You can prioritize that and respond quickly. So I think, being intentional about what you build for automation is really important, and making sure you put that customer experience first.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. This is a lot of fun. You guys definitely are passionate about this topic. We dropped links in the chat. So we dropped the link if you guys want to see a demo of the product, see Thread in action. If you want to get some more time with Steve, that link's there as well. Be looking out for those LinkedIn posts. Win $100. Should be great. Thanks so much for everyone's time.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Until next time.